So on today's video, we're going to learn about some of the oldest buildings and places and things in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm going to teach you about the oldest cemetery in the United States, which is in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'll also teach you about the oldest Virgin Mary statue, the oldest Madonna in the United States, which is also in Santa Fe. I'll teach you all about the Cross of the Martyrs, the house on De Vargas Street, the oldest house in the United States, the San Miguel Mission, or the San Miguel Chapel, which is the oldest church in the United States. I'll teach you all about the Loretto Chapel and the Miraculous staircase. I'm going to teach you about the Palace of the Governors, which is the oldest public building in the United States. And I'll teach you all about the foundation and establishment of the city of Santa Fe. So today's video is the history of Santa Fe. If you type into your search engine, what's the oldest cemetery in the United States, you'll most likely get this. And if you ask what's the oldest cemetery in Santa Fe, New Mexico, you're going to get this. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about the oldest cemeteries in the United States, I'm talking about the European cemeteries. I'm not talking about the Native American burial grounds, because those are much older. I'm talking about the settlers who came from Europe, the cemeteries that they built. While both these answers are wrong, the oldest cemetery is in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This cemetery is so old it doesn't even have a name. It's so old that it doesn't even have the grave markers anymore. It's so old that you can't even go into it anymore. You have to take a picture of it from a distance. It's so old that all that's there is a memorial honoring the original settlers of Santa Fe. So a while back, I was going to do a story about this cemetery. I was just going to show the picture of it and tell how it's the oldest cemetery in the United States and definitely the oldest in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But when I searched on Google, I couldn't find it. Searched on Wikipedia, I couldn't find it. I did so many searches and I couldn't even find a picture of this cemetery. And that's when I realized that this cemetery ain't even documented at all. So I'm going to be the first to document this cemetery. Now here's a picture of the cemetery in honor of the original settlers who are buried here. Now the original settlers came to Santa Fe between 1607 and 1610. So if they came here in 1610 and this is their cemetery, then I would consider this the oldest cemetery in the United States. Now the pilgrims who arrived on the Mayflower and landed in Plymouth didn't land in Plymouth until 1620. That's 10 years after they had already established Santa Fe, New Mexico. So in my calculations, this would be the oldest cemetery in the United States. Now if you want to see it for yourself, when you go downtown Santa Fe, when you're looking at the cathedral, it's right to the left of the cathedral, in between the cathedral park and the cathedral. Since I couldn't find not even a picture of it on the internet, me and my wife went downtown just so I could take a picture of it. So here's a picture of the oldest cemetery in the United States of America, and definitely the oldest in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You heard it first here. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. Today I'm going to tell you guys the history of La Conquistadora. La Conquistadora is the oldest Virgin Mary statue in what is now the United States of America. So she was brought to Santa Fe by Fray Alonso Benavides in 1625. He was a friar who came directly from Spain. So La Conquistadora was built in Spain and she came from Spain. And she's still here to this day. So around this time, the Catholic religion pretty much ruled the world. So when the Spanish conquistadores came to this side of the world, they were Catholic. They were under the Spanish flag, under the Spanish Empire, which was Catholic. And most of them were Catholic by religion, by tradition, and by culture. So a lot of them took their Catholicism very serious. And they were very superstitious. They believed that the Virgin Mary had power. And they believed that just having her statue was having her, that she resided in her statue. So when Fray Alonso Benavides brought the statue from Spain to Santa Fe, he had a ceremony and put it in the church. He put it in the San Miguel Mission. And another fun fact, San Miguel Mission is the oldest church and house in America. So that's the story of La Conquistadora. She came to Santa Fe in 1625, which makes her the oldest Virgin Mary statue in what is now the United States of America. During the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, the Spaniards who escaped with their lives did take La Conquistadora with them back to Mexico. When Don Diego de Vargas came back in 1692, he brought the Virgin Mary back because he vowed to sit the queen on her rightful throne. Those were his words anyway. So in 1692, he came back, he brought the statue, which he believed to have miraculous powers. He believed the Virgin Mary resided in the statue. He thought that it gave him power to defeat the natives and reconquer New Mexico, which he did. So when he got to Santa Fe, he brought back La Conquistadora and he put her back in her rightful place in the church where she belonged. And then some years later, they turned that church into a bigger church, into a cathedral, which is now the St. Francis Cathedral. And if you want to see La Conquistadora, that's where you gotta go today. Go to the cathedral, go all the way to the back and to the left, and there's a room called La Conquistadora Chapel, and that's where the original church stood. Anyway, I just wanted to give you guys another quick history lesson. I hope you learned something new. If you're ever in downtown Santa Fe and you happen to look up, you'll notice atop a hill is a big white cross. Well, this is the cross of the Martyrs. And that hill it stands on is where Fort Marcy used to be. As a matter of fact, when you visit the Cross of the Martyrs, if you look down, you can see the ruins of Fort Marcy still. Anyway, during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, over 300 Spaniards got killed. And out of those who got killed, 21 of them were Catholic friars. So the Cross of the Martyrs commemorates the 21 friars who got slaughtered during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. So the original cross was made of stone, and they commemorated it during the 1920s Fiestas de Santa Fe. So this stone cross sat on the hill overlooking downtown Santa Fe for almost 75 years. Then in 1994, they rebuilt it and made a bigger steel cross, and that's the one that you see today. So the Cross of the Martyrs is a good place to visit if you're in Santa Fe, New Mexico. If you're at the Cross of the Martyrs, it overlooks all of downtown. You can see the cathedral, you can see everything. You could also see the ruins of Fort Marcy. It's a good place to take a break to. And as you're walking up to the Cross of the Martyrs, there's a bunch of plaques that tell the whole history of Santa Fe from 1610 till now. Anyway, the Cross of the Martyrs in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I hope you learned something new. Did you know that Santa Fe has the oldest church in the United States? Today I'm going to tell you about San Miguel Mission or San Miguel Chapel, aka the oldest church in America. But what they really mean is it's the oldest church in the continental United States. So in 1610, the church was first built by natives from Tlaxcala. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'll spell it right here. So these were Mexican natives who came up with Oñate. They were allies, and they were settling in Santa Fe at the time in that area, and it was known as Barrio de Analco. So these Mexican natives from Barrio de Analco, under the instruction of the friars, the Franciscan friars, built this church. Believe it or not, the walls from 1610 are still standing and they still hold mass and other Catholic services to this day. Of course, they've had restorations and they've rebuilt it over time, but it's still standing and the original walls are still there. This church was first a church under Spain, then Mexico, then the U.S.A., and it's still there today. So this church has been through a lot. So it's been a place of worship for Spanish soldiers and Native American and Spanish settlers. It's also served as an infirmary for Franciscan missionaries. It was also used as a military chapel at one time, and today they still use it for Sunday Mass in Latin and English. So the San Miguel Mission rests on an early Pueblo settlement that they date to about 800 to 1300. And then they say that it was abandoned about 200 years before the Spanish came. So I'm going to give you a quick timeline so you can know what this church has been through. So in 1610 it was built. Then in 1640 it was partially destroyed by a governor who was fighting with the church. Then in 1680 during the Pueblo Revolt they tried to burn it down. Of course, only the roof was wood, so that's what burnt, and the walls were damaged. Then in 1693 Don Diego de Vargas housed captives from the war in there. And he would also house the captives that they would capture from the northern nomadic tribes like the Comanches, the Utes, the Navajos, the Apaches. They were at war with these guys, so whenever they would capture them, they would house them in San Miguel Mission. Them along with all the other prisoners that he took during his reconquest of New Mexico. Some of these people that were taken prisoner and captured, some of these captives were kids. So they were raised under Spanish families, raised with the Spanish, raised and taught Spanish, and they became Spanish soldiers in the future. They became the ones who built Santa Fe, along with the Hispanics, of course. In 1710, they rebuilt it, including a new roof. Then in 1798, they did some more major repairs. They also constructed the altar screen. Then in 1848, they added a 3-tiered bell tower. Then in 1856, the San Jose bell is added. Then in 1862, they added a wooden floor instead of the earth floor. I guess in 1872, they had a big storm and the bell tower was knocked over and destroyed. After that, they brought the bell inside and housed it in the church for protection. And till this day, that's where it's on display. You could go see it. Then in 1887, they were just gonna demolish it. They were tired of having it there. But instead of that, they remodeled it and they rebuilt it. They added 2 stone buttresses to hold the crumbling walls. They plastered the walls inside and out. They made a tar and gravel roof instead of the old mud roof. And then they rebuilt the fallen bell tower, a newer and smaller one. And then it was saved from demolition. Then in 1955, archaeologists started digging under the church to see what year it was really built. During these excavations, they found bones, pottery, and other things that are on display over there. You could go check it out. Then inside where they did the excavation, there's like a glass over it so you could look and see everything. Anyway, go visit the oldest church in the United States of America. It's in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's the San Miguel Chapel or the San Miguel Mission. And it's dubbed the oldest church in America. Go check it out. I hope you learned something new today. This is Have you guys heard about the Miraculous staircase yet? Well, today I'm going to tell you guys about the Miraculous staircase, which is located in the Loretto Chapel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So there's 3 reasons why it's considered miraculous. The first reason is the person who built it. The second reason is the wood that was used to build it. And the third reason is the way it was constructed. Now let me explain. Apparently, Saint Joseph himself built the stairs. The wood that it was built with is a kind of spruce that can't be found anywhere near New Mexico. As a matter of fact, it can't be found anywhere in the world. The closest they found is a relative in Alaska. And the way it was constructed, it has 2 360 spirals with no center pole for support. There's no nails, no glue. It only has little wooden pegs. And that's why it's considered miraculous. Engineers to this day come to Santa Fe and study the stairs and they can't figure it out. They can't explain how it was built, the way it was built with no supports. So let me tell you the legend real quick. So the Sisters of Loretto, a group of nuns, came from the east and came to Santa Fe in 1852. And in 1853 they founded the Academy of Loretto. Loretto just means Our Lady of Light. So it was the school of Our Lady of Light. Okay, so the bishop, Jean-Baptiste Lamy, he was the bishop of Santa Fe, so he was in charge of the archdiocese of the church at the time. He brought an architect all the way from Paris, France, and this architect's name was Antoine Mauly or something like that. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But he's the one who built the St. Francis Cathedral. At this time, the Sisters of Loretto's school was thriving. They had about 300 students, they had about 10 buildings, and it was doing good. The only thing they didn't have was a chapel. So since that French architect was still in town and he had just finished the cathedral, the sisters went to him and asked him if he'll build them a chapel, and he agreed. So in 1873, he began building the Loretto Chapel. Fun fact. The Loretto Chapel was modeled and patterned after King Louis IX's Saint Chapelle in Paris, France, which this French architect Antoine Mauly had a hand in remodeling when he was in Paris. So this architect who had a hand in remodeling that church in Paris was going to build this one to look like that church. And so he did. Well, in 1878, the church was pretty much completed, all except for some stairs that they needed to get to the loft. But Antoine Mauly, the architect, died before he could build those stairs. And the reason they hadn't built stairs yet is because there was no way to build stairs in that small space without taking up all the room. So they got together with a bunch of architects and carpenters and they studied a way to make it, and they just couldn't figure out no way. Their conclusion was just to build a ladder. But the nuns didn't want a ladder, to be climbing up and down a ladder in those big ass robes that they wear. They didn't want that. So instead, they all got together and they had a 9-day prayer, a novena. I'm not Catholic, so I don't know how to pronounce it. But they had a novena to Saint Joseph, which is a 9-day prayer. They prayed to him for 9 days on how to solve this staircase problem. Then when they were done with their 9-day prayer, on the 10th day there was a knock on the door. And when they opened it, there was an old man standing out there. All he had was a mule and a toolbox with simple tools. And he was looking for work. So the nuns brought him in and they told him their situation, that they needed a way to get to the top, to the choir loft. After looking at this, he assured them that there is a way to build stairs without taking up all the room and space in the church. So he told them he would build this staircase for them on one condition, that nobody watches him work. He said he wanted to be locked in the church in privacy and nobody to watch him work until he completed it. So they gave him his privacy and he was locked in the church for a few months. Some stories say 3 months, some stories say 5 months, some stories say 8 months, so I don't know how long he was in there. He was in there for a few months though, building this staircase, and when he left, the staircase was completed. The sisters looked at it and they were impressed with it. So I guess they decided to have a banquet in honor of this man and thank him for what he did and pay him. But they looked all over and they couldn't find him. Apparently this guy disappeared. They looked for him and they never found him. So they just decided to believe it must have been Saint Joseph. So they say scientists have took a sample of this wood and it's a spruce that they can't find nowhere in this area. In fact, they say they can't even find it nowhere in the world. The only closest thing they could find close to it is a relative in Alaska. So apparently the wood is miraculous. The man is miraculous and the way it was built is miraculous. It was built with no support, no glue, no nails, nothing but just little wooden pegs, and it makes 2 360 turns, and all its weight rests solely on the bottom, on the base, and on the top where it meets the choir loft. Like I said, engineers come and look at it and they can't figure it out. They can't. It's mystery. Anyway, that's the story of the miraculous staircase in Santa Fe. I hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. So today I'm going to tell you guys about the house on DeVargas Street, aka the oldest house in Santa Fe. And it is also dubbed the oldest house in the United States of America. So the Spanish came and settled in Santa Fe in 1610. They built this house in 1620. So after reading and doing research on this house, I've learned that obviously the house has been built and rebuilt and added on over the years. For example, in 1902 they repaired the walls. They were crumbling, they were falling apart, they were made of adobe. They had to repair them, and while they were repairing them, they inspected them. And as they closely inspected it, they noticed at the base of the wall, the bottom, it was made with puddled adobe. Now puddled adobe was a pre-Spanish way of building houses. The Spanish didn't use that way. So based on this puddled adobe, they're guessing that this house was probably already here when the Spanish came. Because there was a pueblo. There used to be a pueblo in Santa Fe. Right on top of that hill where Fort Marcy stood, where the Cross of the Martyrs is, there used to be a pueblo. But they say that this pueblo was abandoned about 200 years before the Spanish came. So when they got here, it wasn't just an empty land. There was probably structures that had been there. Maybe some were falling into disrepair over the years. 200 years it had been abandoned, so they probably just went and started building on what was already there. So that's what I figured from all my studies, and that's what a lot of other archaeologists have figured. They figured that this house is probably the oldest in the United States for sure, because if it was built pre-colonial, then that means the Native Americans built this house, and when the Spanish came, they just built over it, and over the years they added on and rebuilt, and since it's still standing, now it's the oldest house in America. The oldest house in the United States, I mean. They took wood samples of the vigas and they found that they were cut around 1740 to 1770, so the 18th century. So it's obvious to me that the vigas were built 150 years later or so. So little by little this house became what it was. As I'm telling this story, I'm going to be putting pictures and letting them just show. And there's pictures of this house when cameras first came out, like the 1800s. And look how the house looks. It looks like it's about to fall apart the next time the wind blows. So it's understandable why they had to plaster the walls, remodel it, try to keep it there, try to keep the structure standing. Because Santa Fe has a lot of history, so they kept the structure standing and you could go see it to this day. It's right across the street from the San Miguel Mission. It's the oldest house in Santa Fe for sure, but a lot of people say it's the oldest house in the United States, and I believe that too. And when I say the oldest house in the United States, I need you guys to understand I'm talking about the oldest house still standing. Because who knows, maybe they built the house in 1598 over there in San Juan. Oñate and his people might have built them a couple houses. But those houses ain't standing anymore, so they don't count. The house on DeVargas Street is still standing, and it's been standing since at least 1620. That's when the Spanish built it and lived in it. But it was probably there since about the year 1300 or even before. Anyway, it's a heated debate whether it's the oldest house in America or not. but definitely it's the oldest house in Santa Fe. Anyway, I hope you learned something new. Did you know Santa Fe has the oldest public building in the United States of America? So the Palace of the Governors is the oldest public building in continuous use in the United States of America. So they first built this building in 1610 when Santa Fe was established. So at the time, Santa Fe served as the capital of the northern province of New Spain. Mexico City was the capital in the south. The Camino Real, the Royal Road, connected Mexico City to Santa Fe. Spain first settled New Mexico in 1598 when Oñate came and settled in Oqueawingue, so his place of government was Oqueawingue Pueblo. And then Oñate was arrested in 1607 and taken to Mexico City. Don Pedro de Peralta, the new governor, moved away from Oqueawingue and settled in a new place, Santa Fe. Then he built this building, the Palace of the Governors. Anyway, this building is served under 3 different governments: the government of Spain, the government of Mexico, and the government of the United States. So there's another New Mexico fact for you, that the Palace of the Governors in Santa Fe, New Mexico is the oldest public building in continuous use in the United States of America. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you for watching. This is Tragedy. Did you know that the name Santa Fe is just an abbreviation for a longer name? So the full name of the city of Santa Fe is La Villa Real de la Santa Fe de San Francisco de Assisi. Translated, this is the royal city of the Holy Faith of St. Francis of Assisi. And the reason it has this name is because when Pedro de Peralta started Santa Fe, he came with some friars from the order of St. Francis. So he came with Franciscan friars. So when they settled down, they named it the royal city of the Holy Faith of St. Francis of Assisi, which in Spanish is La Villa Real de la Santa Fe de San Francisco de Assisi. But since that's a handful to pronounce, and it's more like a sentence than a word, they just call it Santa Fe for short. And this didn't used to be the name, this is still the name today. So fun fact, Santa Fe's real name is La Villa Real de la Santa Fe de San Francisco de Assisi, but they just use the abbreviated form of Santa Fe. I hope you learned something new today. So if you're ever watching videos about New Mexico history and it talks about the year Santa Fe was founded, you'll hear 3 different years. Some will say 1607, some will say 1609, and some will say 1610. And there's a reason for this confusion, and if this confuses you, let me clear up that confusion. So all 3 of these years are significant to the founding of Santa Fe. So let me break it down for you real quick. The year 1607, Juan de Oñate was arrested for crimes against indigenous people and sent to Mexico City in chains. Oñate made his headquarters at Oqueawingue Pueblo, right in their pueblo, so there was a lot of violence against the natives, a lot of fighting, a lot of clashing. So after they arrested him, they ordered Don Pedro de Peralta to build a settlement away from the pueblo, so that way they could try to avoid this fighting. So the year 1607 was the year Don Pedro de Peralta was ordered to found a new capital city. 1609 is the year that they founded Santa Fe, and 1610 is the year that they established Santa Fe. So that's the reason that they get these 3 years confused, because they all have something to do with the founding of Santa Fe, but the original establishment was 1610. So in 1607 they were ordered to build Santa Fe, in 1609 they founded Santa Fe, and in 1610 they established Santa Fe. I hope you learned something new today. This is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. I'm out.
Eres, fuiste y será la que mi cora nunca soltará. No estás muy presente, pero en mi mente dejaste una marca permanente. Dime qué haces, hoy bajé pa'l casa. Te rocé dando vueltas por ahí, con la ilusión de verte y decirte: oye, perdí hasta la noción del tiempo. Ahora me pierdo en el tiempo esperando el momento de volver a vernos. Y qué rico cuando nos vemos. No dejemos morir todo lo que nos da vida. Ay, vida mía, llego a esperar. recordándote noches y días.